Welcome back to New Cycle, this amazing survival city building game, think Anno meets Frostpunk. I have made a full let's play on the game from start to finish in its current state, so don't hesitate to check this in the video description below. But today I want to cover my top 10 tips. So let's dive in. So first of all, if you've never seen the game, this is sort of a mid-game city. You have my residential area, you have food production, you have more kind of industry, farms. This is the type of game we're talking about. But before diving into the actual tips, a few quick UI reminders. First of all, you start with only a couple of resources at the top. You can right-click on them to change them. Right now, for example, this paper, if I want lumber instead, I can just right-click and change it. But more importantly, you have this small button over here to have double the amount of resources shown in the UI. So that's quite an important one. And second UI tip is if you press Alt, you will move through information visible on top of each building. So for example, you can show what is the production done there. You can show how many people are working. So that enables you to quickly see, okay, over here, I have no workers. I can increase the number of workers, right? Or you can show warnings. Do I have any warnings anywhere? Sorry, I don't think we do. But it will show you if there's any problem in your city in a sense. I would have loved, to be honest, also an option to have all three at the same time, but that's not available yet. Because obviously, again, these top 10 tips are based on the version today. This game is still being developed in early access, so hopefully it's gonna get even better. And then last but not least, I do want to highlight also that you have different layers. You just click on your buildings at the bottom and then you can see the different layers of where the wind is, for example, for your windmills, right? The mining layers, where there's a lot of mining resources. But what I did want to highlight to you is more the fertility and drilling layers, drilling being where you're gonna get your oil, because you need to make sure you don't put, all of your basic buildings on top of this. For example, this is my fertile land over here, so I need to keep this for farms. And frankly, I actually didn't. As you can see some industrial buildings there, so I should not have done that. Tip number one, the game actually allows both grid form and free form building. You switch from one mode to another by pressing your tab button. So right now, for example, I am in free form building. Now I press tab, you can see the grid has appeared and I will be on the grid. And this is the same, for your building, but also for roads, obviously, right? Where over here, this is sort of grid base. But then if I press tab, I can make completely different. Tip number two is a very important one around your nodes of resources. For example, over here, this is water node. We're going to have also different nodes like food, etc. I'm going to show you, and each of these are different. The water node, for example, you actually want to make sure that each of your well only touches one node. So here, for example, it will only touch this one node versus here it will touch those two nodes. Because when I place it like this, it will block the two nodes, but it will only give me resources from one, basically. So what you want to do is you want to place one over here, and then you're going to want to place another one there. This way you will get production from both. On the other hand, if you look over here for food, like the meat or the mushroom, for example, I can put as many gathering camp as I want into their radius. They will just all tap into all of this. So if I put one, that means it's going to take, for example, 1 year to get empty. If I put two, it's going to take less time to get empty. So if you have big reserve, you can put multiple. Tip number three is actually all again linked to water. I just mentioned, you need to make sure to have one well per node. And the reality is, don't wait for the end of the game, do it right away, because these wells, they cost basically nothing. And we're talking about 1 log and 32 stones. This is really not a lot of resources. They don't cost any people, any workforce to actually function, right? And they don't even need a road to be functioning. So what I suggest is that at the beginning of the game, as soon as sort of you have a bit of stone and wood, just put those those well all across the map until you have locked all of the water wells, because this way you're gonna have a huge water production. And the reason this is a really important tip is because at the beginning of the game, you won't have access to tools, you won't have access to clothes, you won't have access to many of the services. The only thing you'll have access to is food and water. And so by having huge water production, what you can do is move your water consumption to double, like the maximum it can be. And with this, you're going to not only get a lot of morale, which helps with your efficiency, you're also going to get a health bonus. And at the beginning of the game, your health is actually quite negative, quite tough. So having this health bonus is critical. So yes, basically make sure that you have as many wells as you can right from the start. That gives you a huge water production and then boost your water consumption so that you have nice morale and efficiency. And so while we're talking about ways to get sort of early game good morale and things like this, tip number 4 is around housing. Again, at the beginning of the game, in terms of services, this is the only one available. You don't have access to entertainment, health, or security, so you need to focus on housing. But the tip here is make sure that you not only have enough houses to cover your people, so this needs to reach 100% to get 10 morale. Actually, make sure that you give even more houses, because what will happen is when you have enough housing, first, your health is going to go up, but more importantly, your attraction is also going to go up. Right now, for example, I don't have enough houses for all of my people, so I have a negative, I have a malus for housing. Basically, less people want to join because there's no space when they arrive. Versus if you have more space for people when they arrive, then they will want to join. And at the beginning of the game, attraction is actually quite hard to get high. Obviously, right now I'm a point where, because outer awareness is so high, it doesn't matter at all, but at the beginning of the game, it matters. Tip number 5, always have sort of more houses than what you need so that you get a great morale bonus, but also a great attraction bonus. Now, I've been talking a bit about efficiency, morale, so let's talk about this in tip number 5. First of all, what I do want to mention is that this efficiency, this workforce, this morale concept, it is actually different for each tier of population, right? The worker one is different from the craftsman, and it's also different from the specialist. So you need to manage them one by one. It is also, by the way, also different from the one on the world map. I'll talk about it just now. Second tip is, in my opinion, you should focus as much as you can on the services first before you give sort of extra distribution of supply, extra food, extra water. Only exception to that one is the water, as I just mentioned. But for everything else, it is a lot easier to do services. First of all, services, you can get 40 points right away. Versus if you look over here, distribution of water, even a double distribution of water is only 15 points. Versus this is 40. The other reason why you want to do this is because, as you can see, right, this is 15 versus 12 versus 9. So if you look at regular versus double, for example, right, you're not even doubling the morale boost, but you're increasing the consumption by a lot. I mean, especially if you look over here, right, like medium is 6. So this one is almost, it's just a bit more, than double the morale, but it's so much more water, right? Like it's almost 4 times the water. And the last reason why I think, you really need to focus on services first is because the services are a one-time investment. And for example, houses is just you build, it's the cost of a house, you build the house and then you get this bonus forever. Similarly, for something like a guardhouse, etc., it is mostly the cost of the building and then usually a bit of electricity. For example, this one 55 electricity. Here we have the infirmary, same, it's a bit of electricity, because you don't need to give, those things over here, like in this case, medicine and fruit. In the case of the tavern, the drinks, etc., you don't need to give those things to get the bonus over here of morale. If you do give those things over here, like apple, you actually just get additional bonuses. So for example, the apple is plus 5 health. But even if you don't have it, don't worry, you still get the morale bonus. So again, as part of tip number 5, make sure that you provide first the services before you provide the extra supply. And then lastly, on this one, tip number 5, I do want to highlight, how this is all working. Basically what happens is, based on your morale, you're going to have a different efficiency. If you have a low morale, basically below -20, your efficiency is only 30. If you have regular morale between 40 and 60, 70, so a bit more than double. And if you have an amazing morale, right, more than 86, you're going to have 110 of efficiency. Now, this efficiency is the main element that you will see in your production building, right? Based on this efficiency, you're gonna see how much you're producing. The other element is the workforce, right? So you have the efficiency and the workforce. They're going to give you the production per day. The workforce is this second over here, right? Where you can actually move it between 0.5 and 1.5. But what you do need to look at is when you increase it, for example, 1.5, you have the negative malus of morale that moved from -5 to -20, right? So your efficiency is probably going to decrease. Similarly, they may also get more sick and more tired with high and intense. So in my opinion, workforce is a bit more kind of like the emergency thing. If you really need, a boost in workforce, then you do this, but otherwise don't really touch that one. Focus on getting a high morale, thanks to things like this, to get your efficiency high. Tip number 6, let's talk about the run. Tip number 6, let's talk about the world map over here. This is quite an important one. Well, first of all, as soon as you can, definitely go into the world map. So when I say as soon as you can, it's because you need to research surveillance over here in your development tree. But as soon as you can do this, you will get the scout guild, build it, and get 2 scouts teams. They actually cost nothing. The scouts team, they don't use people, they don't use resources or anything like this, at least for now. So definitely build them as soon as you can. And then what you're gonna do is just send them to explore, the world map, and you're gonna find things. For example, over here, in this region, we found, some water, so we can build a well, and I have built it actually. We also found some, coal over here. So we could build, a mine at some point, etc., etc. So this is really critical because these ones are infinite resources. This is infinite water, this is infinite coal. What it does require though is it will probably require a few people and either some food, tool, fuel, or maybe all of the above to produce. In this case over here, for example, I have 6 people and 6 food supply, and that's giving me 150 of water per day. If I decrease the number of people, as you can see, this is being decreased to only 50. Similarly, if I didn't produce food supply, this will also be decreased. How to know, how this is happening is you hover over here over the productivity. So this is a bit similar to the productivity in your city, but with different sort of impact. You can see that because I have workforce, so because I have 6 people, I have a bonus of 40. Because I'm giving food supply, I have a bonus of 20. Because I'm not giving food tools, I get 0, right? And then we have the road, which is right now plus 25. If I didn't have a road, I would get a minus 25. So that would really be a problem. And similarly, because I don't have the railway, I have a minus 25. When you get the railway, you get a bonus. And so that's going to increase your production by a lot. So the reality is actually, until you have a road, you're probably not going to produce much. But when you start getting a road and you start also having food supply, you will definitely be able to produce a lot of resources over here, including food, etc. So this is really powerful. Tip number 7, you're going to build stockpiles to store your resources. What is very important is this is actually quite a simple concept because it's universal storage, meaning that your people don't actually need to transport resources. If I'm, for example, making over here some sand, it's not like somebody is taking this sand and sending it over here. It just goes sort of teleports into the stockpile, so you can put those stockpiles anywhere you want. Or similarly, for the kiln over here, I'm taking sand and making glass. It's not as if somebody is going to get the sand somewhere, it just happens automatically. So you can put those storages anywhere you want in the map. And as I said, earlier, just try to avoid, for example, fertile land. That's probably a bad idea. Tip number 8, when you get into some of the more advanced stages, you're going to unlock things like conveyor belts. This is going to be linked, to upgrading your mines and some of the buildings into higher level. You can go from, you know, basic mine to mine level 2, level 3. This is quite good, but the key tip here is really make sure that you upgrade these mines and start building those high level buildings when you're ready to play with conveyors. You know, when you basically have enough of the resources to build those conveyors, when you have energy, when you have also space, because you're gonna need to connect those buildings with those conveyors, so those buildings should be next to each other, all those type of things. It is going to give you a great boost in productivity if you do it well, but the problem is it actually gives you a big malus in productivity if you don't have a conveyor belt on a high level building. So don't build them right away, you know, you do be careful with this. Tip number 9, if you click on your city over here, name of your city at the top left, you have actions in your main hall. These are really powerful. You know, they will not be unlocked right away. Some of them will be unlocked through events, some of them will be unlocked with time, but I can guarantee you that some of them are really powerful. In particular, the one I personally have been using a lot is the spreading the world. This is one where you just spend a bit of resources and you get people in exchange after some time. So that's a really good one. It can also help you, for example, you know, I have a very low morale because of an event. You can do this, plus 23 on morale. Or you have, you know, a very low health in winter, or because of an event, you do this one over here, plus 20 of health. Or the opposite of those two, you know, your morale and health maybe are okay, but your people are not working, well, you can do this one, emergency work shift, right? So make sure that you sort of know them well, make sure you know the cost. So you have, for example, always a reserves of tool for this, always a reserve, you know, I mean, this costs nothing, but this one costs some food. So this always in reserve, so you can use them when you have a bad event that happens. And last but not least, at the end of the campaign, your goal is to build a bunker. Here, I want to tell you that you actually do need to move fast, but not too fast. What does that mean? Well, for example, it's important to open the next level in advance of the bunker so that you're not stuck. Similarly, not all sectors are equal. You know, some sectors are more important than others, some are better than others. They do often cost more resources or more advanced resources, but you know, it's better to use, for example, one advanced sector than two bad ones because your space is so limited in the bunker. And then last but not least, don't start building too many sectors at the same time, otherwise they're gonna be too slow to be constructed. So it is, ladies and gentlemen, my top 10 tips to thrive and survive in this survival city building game. If you want to see all of those tips in action and more, look at the playlist that's now on the screen where I play from start to finish this amazing game. Thank you for watching and I hope to see you next time.